everyone. Welcome back. We are part 2, and I have a feeling it's going to be part 2 of several more episodes, honestly. I think we could really listen to Carrie and Ryan tell their story for hours, and we'll try and condense it in less than an hour for you guys watching. And if you're watching, I keep forgetting to do this because I get so into the let's get to it. But give us a like so the algorithms will work in our favor. We got 60 views on this last episode, like the first episode of talking about this navigating complexities in marriage and narcissism recovery. And I was like, what? Hopefully, I mean, I don't know if anybody's watching it all the way through, but that helps fight through those algorithms. And I had so many people reach out to me privately and start asking questions. And fun fact, somebody that I used to work with shared that they were labeled a narcissist. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did not pick up on that. So I say that to go into what is a narcissist? Are there variations of narcissist? Can someone really recover? Because that was another comment that we got, that this particular person that they were mentioning, they did not think could recover from being a narcissist. So then we just started kind of, I don't know, we're gonna lean on Carrie and Ryan because you guys have studied this way more than anyone else that I know that's not in the profession. Disclaimer, we are not psychiatrists, we're not psychologists. I'm nowhere near an expert. I would say Ryan and Carrie probably are borderline experts just because they're living it.
Neither of us are borderline.
You know, I'm just saying borderline, but I'll let them speak for themselves. So take it away. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think like anything else, narcissism can have a spectrum, right? And there are a lot of other disorders that narcissists can potentially have that can contribute to how difficult it might be for that person to navigate healing, right? You could have a narcissist could be a sociopath or a psychopath. They could have antisocial personality disorder. These are things that could potentially skew somebody toward even less feeling emotion, less empathy, more violence, more anger. And so, yeah, I think definitely there's a spectrum. I think how it manifests is going to be different in every individual because their circumstances growing up are going to be different. Their tendencies and personalities are going to be different based on who they are. So all of those things, and I don't think that the precise way that I uh, kind of went through my healing, I don't think is necessarily capable for everybody. People who might have other disorders may have a more difficult road. They may need more interventions. I can't even unequivocally say that every single narcissist could potentially be healed. I think they probably could with enough intervention, but that's just my opinion. So, but what I will say is that I think in any situation like this, what's most helpful is to not kind of put everybody in one box and label them and say, we're done with you, right? I think everybody deserves another chance, even though I do recognize that there are people on the far end of the spectrum who can be, very cruel and very damaging and very abusive. And so for the people that are victimized by those narcissists, I'm sorry, it's really hard to deal with that, right? And so it's no wonder people that may be victims of that would be potentially resistant to the idea that narcissists could heal. They're probably very angry, have a lot of resentment, so I get all that stuff too. It's very complex.
So Ryan, can you remind everyone, did you know that how do I phrase this? Did did Carrie bring it to light that you have narcissistic tendencies based off the therapy that she was going through, or did you yourself know something's not right? Or can you just speak to that really quick?
That's really
Did
interesting.
you diagnose yourself first, or did Carrie bring it to light, or how did that work?
So yeah, she pointed it out to me. My feeling actually then was I had always felt different. I felt special. Um, and so my sort of feeling was, yeah, I'm different. Yeah, I'm special, of course.
In a good way.
Yeah, in a good way, right?
Yeah.
I'm better than everybody. I'm smarter than everybody. And so when she brought me like, hey, you're checking all the boxes, right, for this, I didn't even deny it. I didn't even say like, no, I'm not. It was like, well, of course I would feel better than everybody because I am.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I want to
So
remind everyone to go back and watch part 1 when you really get into the details of that.
Do we want to go over the criteria to be diagnosed with a narcissistic personality disorder?
yeah, sure.
Just
Do you
so we
wanna
can
do you wanna go? I know
cover
you
all
have
of
them
the
up.
bases.
And Carrie, just to let everyone know watching, you're not doing this so they can go and diagnose someone that they know.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, please don't do that. It's complicated because, well, we'll just go through these and I'm going to let you kind of expand and explain how that feels for you. Because it's easy to read these and go, oh, that's exactly what this person does, and sort of like pin that on them. But it's different, I think, from his perspective on how it actually feels. So this is the DSM-5 narcissism guidelines. When they are evaluating, they're looking for more than 5 of these, I guess, in a person. Inflated self-esteem or a grandiose sense of self-importance or superiority.
Yeah, so we touched on that last time. And what's interesting is at the time, right, like when I was in that, I did feel that way. I did feel I did have a sense of superiority. Um, what's weird and interesting is that after coming out of it, I can actually look back on that and see that really I felt awful about myself. Um, but I couldn't tell because the narcissism hides it and you actually can't feel it. So one of the weirdest things of working toward coming out of the narcissism as the sort of like the narcissistic ego was breaking down, I actually could start feeling things that I had never felt before. And it was a really bizarre sensation to start feeling things that you didn't feel before. And I'm sure that those feelings were there, but they were being suppressed to my consciousness, right? They were either subconscious or somehow being suppressed. And so a lot of stuff that a normal person feels, the narcissist just doesn't feel. So, for example, the narcissist doesn't really feel shame. The shame is there, and again, this isn't going to make a lot of sense because it sounds contradictory. But after coming out of it, I can look back on it and go, oh, the shame was being suppressed, was being hidden. So it's hard to explain, but it's not. Yeah, you feel that way. You do feel superior to everybody, but
So number 2 is craving admiration. And I just want to add a note really quick. What I think is interesting is in our relationship, I would offer what I would think would be loving attention, affection, gifts, making, a special meal or planning a special thing. He did not care for any of it. And he would respond um, annoyed sometimes. And I was very confused because I know that he wants something from me to feel he's like not feeling loved. And I'm like, well, what am I doing wrong here? And I think there's a difference between the admiration that he was wanting and what I was actually I was trying to connect in a way that he couldn't really connect.
yeah. So the connection part is very interesting because I could not connect. But I would say it's not so much craving admiration as it was craving worship. And I know that that's look, I know.
I know, it just sounds wild, right? Like, what?
But it's more like if she said, oh, like, you know, you just did such a great job on this. Didn't hit me. What might have hit me was, you did this better than anyone else could have. You see, there's a difference. One is like, yeah, you're great. The other is, you're the best. And when you believe that you're the best, it's kind of like, look, when the world doesn't show you what you believe about yourself, it's upsetting. That's true for everyone. You know, if you believe that you're a good chess player and somebody says you're a terrible chess player, you're upset. But if you believe that you're a great chess player and somebody says you don't know very much about wine, you don't care, because it's not part of your identity. As soon as you have something that's part of your identity and the world doesn't, you know, show you accordance with that, now you're upset. So when you think you're the best and somebody praises you, but not in a way saying you're the best, it automatically feels like a slight. It's kind of, it's weird, but that's how it feels.
Number 3, exploitative relationships. Example, manipulation.
Yeah. So the manipulation isn't, well, okay. So I'm going to give my experience of it, because I'm aware that there are narcissists that probably can exploit people on purpose, very much on purpose. Mine wasn't so much, it wasn't a cruel manipulation. It was more manipulation so that, to avoid feeling things. So if I wanted a certain outcome, or I wanted people to behave a certain way because I wouldn't feel good if they behaved a different way, I would manipulate the situation to make sure that the outcome was how I wanted it. And obviously this can hurt people, right? And people don't like being manipulated. So no good, no matter what level it's at. Can we go back really quickly to the inability to connect?
Oh yeah, sure.
What did that feel like to you?
Well, I thought we should give them that exercise that we did with looking at me from your eyes and then looking at me when you touch it on your heart.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? Because this is a wild exercise that we did.
So
I'm ready.
so last talk we talked about how I said I was always in my head, right? Rationalizing everything, thinking about everything, never in sort of a present state. And so when I would look at her, okay, I don't remember how this came about, but at some point I decided, instead of trying to be in my head, I would try to bring my feeling to my heart instead, and sort of inhabit my body more instead of being up in my head. And we did this exercise where I would try to be in my heart and look at her, and she said that I looked different to her. She see the difference. And I said, come on, no, that's ridiculous. So we did an experiment where we were looking at each other, and then at some point I would try to bring my attention down into my heart and look at her. And she could tell exactly when I did it every single time.
That give me chills. That's cool.
And you can try this. Like, I don't know if whoever's the one who's staring, trying not to feel like anything for the person you're looking at, which is hard when you're looking eyes to eyes. Typically looking eyes to eyes naturally brings about that like attachment connection, you know? But he had been so conditioned to just sort of like cut himself off from the body that everything was just so in his thoughts, in the cognition. And so it's like when he looked at me, it was like he was looking through me. I felt like I didn't exist in his eye gaze.
Mm-hmm.
And so when he would bring his attention to his heart, it was like there was this person there all of a sudden. Like actually, it was like we met, our eye gazes met. Before it was like I wasn't there. It's very interesting.
The only thing I can sort of liken it to is if you've ever seen a person who was unconscious, like, you know what they look like when they're conscious, and then if they go unconscious, you can see there's almost like nothing there, right? Like you're looking at them, but you don't see them there. Mm-hmm. It's like that.
All right. You want to go on number 4?
Yeah.
Little to no empathy.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So empathy to me is something that has to come about when you yourself feel okay, because you cannot give to someone else if you yourself are not feeling well enough, right? If your bucket is overflowing, certainly you can't hold the water from someone else's bucket when theirs is overflowing. So I think that the reason that, at least for me in particular, this was so difficult, I didn't have any empathy, was because I was literally in pain or avoiding pain constantly. So I had no room for empathy. It's not that I didn't care about the people around me, because certainly like my children and Carrie, I cared about them, and I could feel that I cared about them, but I couldn't give them empathy because there was just no room for it. I didn't have the capacity to empathize.
Can you give an example, Ryan, of what that may have looked like as just a parent to a child?
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's say my daughter is upset about something, right? She's small, she's screaming and crying and having a meltdown. Okay. This is a normal thing, right? Children are supposed to do this. They don't know how to regulate themselves. She's freaking out. That um, that screaming and crying is so upsetting to me that it brings up all of this anger in me. And because I feel like she's doing it to me, she's making me uncomfortable. This isn't okay. And then instead of being able to like hold a space for her and help her to co-regulate and go, "Oh, honey, I see you're upset. Is there something that I can do?" And be there for her. I am now angry because she is hurting me. So I have no space to empathize with her pain because I'm overwhelmed with my own.
So, Ryan, I love that example. Take yourself even further back to when you were a kid. Your parents, did they tell you to go to your room when you were upset? Did they tell you, don't cry, you're a man, suck it up? Did they do those things that we traditionally experience from
Yeah,
generation
yes,
to generation?
certainly. And they also had a very interesting phrase, which it's very bizarre, but they used to say, laughing turns to crying. So if you even showed happiness,
It was like shamed.
yeah, we will shame the happiness. Laughing turns to crying. Don't be too excited. Don't be too happy. You're going to end up crying about it. You're going to end up sad.
And that's not allowed. Crying's not
So there was just a general suppression of emotion and avoidance of emotion. Yeah.
allowed. Sort
Okay,
of
so
like highs and lows, right? You just keep it even.
Yeah.
Keep it even.
because it would trigger your parents because they only know what they were taught with their, so that this is going to be a loaded question, or maybe not, maybe it's super easy, but do you think that a narcissist is born, or do you think they're conditioned as
This
a
is
narcissist?
this is such a good question, and I would put everything that I own on that they're conditioned.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
if you think about a little baby is born, right? That little child is innocent, totally. And if that little child is given a loving, caring family where people give them, they meet their needs, and they meet their needs for connection and closeness and safety, um, that child will grow up mentally healthy and stable.
Okay, time out. I got to bring this up. People have different definitions of love and meeting needs. I want to go to the comment of what someone put in our part 1
Mm.
episode of this. This particular person was a golden child, got everything they wanted, so much love.
Not love. So
What?
anybody who's listening to this, Dr. Gordon Neufeld, if you haven't listened to him, everything that he has is just absolutely fantastic. Um, But the goal, right, is to connect with the child. The child needs love, and love in the form of connection and safety. Human connection is our primary need, right? This is why little babies, even if they're fed and things, they can die if they're not held and given love, given that connection. So human connection is the most important thing. And so if you cut off a child emotionally, but you buy them everything that they want, and as soon as they start screaming, you just give in to whatever they want, you've not given them a healthy boundary. You've not connected with them. You've not helped them show how to manage their emotions in a way where you go, I see you're having that emotion. I'm here to help you. You've just gone, shut up, here, take this toy, or whatever it might be. And that, despite what it may feel like to the child in that moment, is cold. It's emotionally dead. And the child eventually learns that, because a lot of human connection and interaction is subconscious. It's on the level of sort of body interaction and subconscious interaction, and the surface level that we are conscious of is a very small part. It's the tip of the iceberg. So much of that other stuff is really important.
I think it's a good point also is that children do come into the world with different temperaments and they're more predispositioned to certain things. So, if your parenting temperament is very similar to your child, it's going to be really easy to attune to them and kind of understand what their needs are and empathize. And if you have a child who is kind of opposite, it's going to be a struggle and it might push the buttons that you might not have healed yet from your own childhood. And you might have all the best intentions in the world and be trying to do what you need to do to meet their needs. But because of your unhealed stuff and because of their temperament, it's just a lot of clashing and a lot of difficulty. And I think I don't want to say that if your child has mental health issues, you've done this to them, because I don't think it's that black and white. And I don't think it's that simple, because there's so many other factors like environmental factors and other people in the children's life that are part of their environment that influence their behavior and how they are. And so they're going to have struggles and difficulties that are going to cause, maybe anxiety or different, behavior stuff that we might label in a number of different ways. And the goal is to see that that's happening for your child and do your best to keep that relationship as grounded as you can in like meeting their emotional attunement needs and growing in yourself, because they're going to show you where you need to grow as they keep requesting for your help in the most unconventional of ways.
Okay, thank you.
You like to use the analogy of like caring for a child being like caring for a house plant.
Yeah.
Right? Like when the house plant shows you that it's starting to wilt or whatever, so if you just go, oh, I did this to this plant and I'm terrible, like that doesn't help you. And if you go, this stupid plant, it never knows how to grow right, that doesn't help it either. Like the only thing that you can do is, because maybe there's not enough sunlight, maybe it needs nutrients, maybe it needs water. There's so many, maybe it's too watered. So many factors that you can't necessarily control, or you might need to learn about to be able to help. And it's that trying to find what is it that I need to help this little plant grow, because the child is going to grow. The child is going to learn. You don't have to force it to grow. You don't have to force it to learn, and you don't have to force it to be a moral human being. If you are in yourself teaching it these things through your actions and giving it a good example, and also just loving it, the child's going to grow just fine. But it's about not shaming the child, not shaming yourself, and just doing what you can to learn and help the child grow in the most organic way possible.
Love the analogy.
Anna.
This sounds preachy, and
That's
I don't
why I
want
was
to
like,
preach.
I don't want it to feel, because we have
Yeah.
really not like understood
Yeah,
our
we've made so many
plants very well.
mistakes. We've made so many mistakes.
Our plants are, they've taught us a lot of things.
So I'll add something during this analogy. I don't know anything about plants. I can injure a house plant pretty quickly and give up and throw it away. Which fortunately I have not done with my children. I've been like, you are growing wonky and you turned yellow, out you go. But what I want to say is that there are websites and apps and people, and we have so much connection now that we could say, something's not going right here. Let me find out what it is. And we have to give ourselves a lot of grace when it comes to parenting, because you can't just look it up. My kid slammed a door today, right? There's going to be thousands of reasons. There's not just he needs more iron. Like, and when you take into account, like, you can't know the answer just by Googling it and find out what's wrong with your kid and how you need to parent to fix the issue. We also have to acknowledge that our parents didn't have any resources. Like, they had a couple of books and some good books, but they didn't have the internet and worldwide selection of professionals at their fingertips, right? You couldn't just look up, what's the right thing to do when my kid turns this color. Like, it's like raising a plant. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, but the answers aren't always at your fingertips. And I think that it's important for us to give ourselves some grace, and even our parents, right?
Yeah.
That they did the best they could. And I know that that's a platitude that, there's mixed feelings, like, no way, they definitely did not do the best they could. But given what knowledge they had, and what resources were available to them, they probably really did the best they could, and they didn't know better. So I'm going to definitely use that plant analogy, that it's easier to make something grow healthy and strong if you know all the answers. And we have to remember that as parents and generationally, we don't know all the answers.
Yeah. And even as humans right now, we might not know all the answers. Even if you polled every expert, they might not know how to handle every single situation. Right?
Yeah.
I think parenting even became a common word like right before our parents' generation. Like, that wasn't even a term that was even around, which is interesting, right? It's just the whole idea of being a parent is just like a new idea. So, do you want to go back to the list of characteristics?
Or do you guys have more questions? Or do you want to like take it in a different direction?
No, let's go on, because I think we got through 4 of the characteristics. Do you think there's more for us to look at?
Yeah. Number 5 is identity is easily disturbed. Example is can't handle criticism.
Yeah. So criticism, right, has to be handled as an adult. It can be handled because you have some level of stable sense of self. Now, like I said earlier, if the world shows you that you aren't who you think you are, there's going to be upset, right? Well, for the narcissist, their sense of self is false. The whole thing is a house of cards, right? The whole thing that they're showing to you anyway. The real self is totally stunted and undeveloped. It's not a full developed adult self. It is a tiny child that probably hates themselves or thinks that they're completely worthless. So any sort of light breeze starts to blow the house of cards over, and any criticism basically is taken really, really hard, especially when the way that you're keeping that house of cards standing is through everybody else telling you that you're amazing and you telling yourself that you're amazing. So yeah, can't handle criticism.
I want to ask a question, Ryan. When you were a kid, thinking back, I probably already know the answer to this. when you were doing something that your parents or your teachers, or if you were in any extracurricular things, the term good job, I'm sure you heard that all the time if you were doing something that met their level of expectation. Am I right?
Oh
Good
yeah.
boy.
Yeah.
Good boy.
Good boy. Good boy. Yeah.
So that we know that instills this extrinsic motivation. Like you only know that you're doing great because you're hearing it from everyone else. Were you ever provided that internal motivation of someone focusing on the process and not the end product? Can you recall a time that as a child where someone actually said when you obviously didn't meet the mark, did someone really say, "Hey Ryan, I love how hard you worked on that. What do you think about it?"
Not significantly. I would say so. I was a basketball player when I was younger. I also, in any sort of extracurricular activity I did, I was always trying to be the best, and fairly frequently was in the top of what I mean, as a basketball player, I was all conference player, leading my team and scoring, all those things, right? I do
Because you like the trophy, because you like the good job, because you like the
because I had to be. I had to be the best.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because if I'm not, I feel awful. I do remember my father, sometimes, if we lost a game or something and I had played well, now I can't tell you if I didn't play well, I'm not sure. But if I played well and we lost a game, he might, say, "Hey, you did your best, did a good job there, you tried hard." Like, so I wouldn't say that I was totally devoid of it. But certainly the focus, right, was not on the process. It was more about in general day-to-day life. Was I making my parents' life easier? Right? Was I making them look good or making their life easier? That then is where you get the good boy. And if you're not making their life more convenient or easier, then you don't get that.
Yeah, to me, that's why I was wondering if the not accepting criticism played a part in that as well.
I'm sure it's all connected in various ways, because I think I mentioned this last time too. When I was in middle school, I was bullied pretty severely. I won't go into all that stuff, but that was, I'm sure, shaped me quite a bit as well. Because I know when I think back on it, I know I was starting down the sort of narcissistic tendency path before that, but I think that that time really solidified because I had no understanding of why I would have been bullied so severely. And the only thing that my brain can come up with is that they're jealous of me. I mean, what else could you come up with as a little kid, right? You can't, as a super impressionable middle school is a really tough time. So you're really, really impressionable. You're really in flux. And if you don't have strong connections with your parents at home who can help you, and I didn't, because I didn't tell them. I don't think I told my parents that I was bullied until I was, in my 30s. They had no
Okay.
idea. So every day I have to get on the bus to go to school, and I am absolutely terrified to get on that bus because I know what's going to happen to me. So, um, I didn't have anybody to go to, so I just had to deal with it mentally myself. So you have to come up, and you can't come up with, well, maybe I'm an asshole. Like maybe that's the reason they're bullying me. You can't come up with that reason, right? Because what kid is going to just volunteer that up? So you come up with,
I
they're
want to
jealous.
share something too. One of the authors. He's also like a clinician or whatever that was very influential in us understanding what was happening in our relationship is Terry Real. And he has a few different books out. But he talks a lot about grandiosity and kind of touches on narcissism. But he, I think, explains that if you can't feel shame, then the defense of those emotions is to go into grandiosity. So it's sort of like there was no place for him to be able to feel into that place of feeling bad about himself. That's just like, you can't, it's too vulnerable. So you have to feel the defense against that, which is I have to be amazing. I can't not be. It just,
Yeah.
there's no room. It's just like kind of black or white.
Yeah. And that is how it went.
Number 6 is lack of attachment and intimacy, which I guess we kind of touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, when you can't allow vulnerable emotions, you cannot be intimate with people, right? So that's pretty obvious.
Number 7, feelings of depression or emptiness when not validated.
Yeah, I mean we've sort of like, talked about all those things, of course. I felt very empty when people weren't praising me.
Mm-hmm. Number 8, a sense of entitlement.
When you're the best, you deserve the best.
I think it's also difficult too, because I think a lot of people who tend to go into the narcissism kind of defense when they are trying to just handle hard things in life, they just tend to go into their head and really develop abilities and skills that allow them to be very intelligent or very skilled in certain ways. And so they really are at the top of different fields. And I think that kind of works against them if they're trying to actually have self-reflection, because they really are at the top. It's kind of hard to not see yourself in that kind of entitled place, especially with the society, the way we set it up. We really give, if you're there, you are better than everyone else and somehow have a right to treat others less than you. I don't understand.
Well, and a lot of people go along with it. I mean, you see this in business company structure hierarchy. What the top person says goes, and they can say whatever they want to you and do whatever they want, and you can't say anything. People won't speak up. People, there's just we live in a culture of hierarchical, this hierarchical structure where, if you are above somebody, you're better than them. That's a problem.
Last one, number 9, can feel like others are envious of them or may envy others.
Yeah. So there's both of those things. Envying others is like you envy them, or at least this is how it went for me. I would envy somebody, but then I would find a way to degrade them, so that in my head, right, I took them down a peg, because I can't allow them to sit there above me, because that doesn't work with the self-image. Then the house of cards gets blown over. So there's a lot of mental gymnastics that goes into maintaining the narcissistic ego, which, by the way, is another interesting point. I was always feeling out of energy. I was always exhausted. And it's the subconscious and conscious maintenance of the narcissistic ego it's so much work. Yeah. Especially if you're not getting all that praise from the outside. I mean, you may see some narcissists who are, like Carrie said, they're in positions of power. They're very, very successful. Then they're probably getting a lot of praise from people all the time, and they may not have to expend so much mental energy. But I don't know. That's a speculation on my part.
I have so many questions, but I know it's going to be for the next part, because we're going to have more episodes. Oh, gosh, I want for the next episode to start off with, take us down a typical day for the old Ryan as an adult. and then the repaired Ryan as an adult. Because I even want to know now about how you react in your career as far as that ladder and that hierarchy and that authority. And but we don't have to go into it today. We'll save that. But those are like questions. And then of course we haven't even gotten to the parenting aspect of being in different phases of all of this and your kids in different ages and stages. All right. Well, I think this is a good stopping point for today. Does anyone want to add anything?
I do want to add one thing because I just thought of it when you said the word repair. When we were talking earlier about the parenting, I had thought this idea, so I want to share it, is sometimes we tend to judge ourselves if we're good enough or not by our child's behavior. And I don't think that's a fair judgment. And the whole point of a relationship is to be like a dance. So there's ins and outs and ups and downs. And just because they're there is not a problem. So the ruptures are supposed to happen, then the repairs are supposed to happen. And by coming into that flow of the in and out, that's where you have a sense of connection and feeling. That's how you know you're doing a good job. The kid feels connected, you feel connected, your spouse feels connected, you feel connected to them, not necessarily how we can measure it in behavior.
I think repair was something that was basically impossible in the narcissistic time, right? Because to repair, you have to admit that you hurt somebody. And to admit that you hurt somebody is likely to admit that you've done something wrong, right? Like that's the sort of feeling that you get. There's a healthy shame associated with having hurt someone. And shame is not a thing that, at least as a nurse, when I was a narcissist, I couldn't feel that. So there was no repair. Like, you come repair with me, because, you know, if you got a problem with something happened or you did something to me, you better repair with me. But I didn't do anything. I don't have to repair with you. And that was pretty much always. And that's really hard for the person on the other side, right? That's getting consistently hurt, especially when narcissists usually are somewhat verbally abusive or unempathetic or whatever. So, yeah, I think she's like a saint, having taken all that. Yeah.
So I can definitely see how the inability to have empathy with someone connects to the lack of connection, which leads to, you know, feelings of shame, which you're not allowed to have, and how it really feeds itself between the different characteristics. So that would be a neat thing to explore later too.
Yeah, it definitely, the self defenses of the narcissistic personality disorder definitely they feed themselves, and there's protection against seeing them and uncovering them. And yeah, it's a very enclosed little system that the narcissist has. Yeah.
And typically, a narcissist won't seek treatment because there's nothing wrong with them. Why would they need to go to a therapist? So, you know, many of us probably have narcissists in our lives that we don't know that they're narcissists, or they don't know that they're narcissists because they're not going to seek therapy, which means they're not going to get diagnosed. And I mean, that explains a lot of why we think that narcissists can't be healed or worked with. There's just not a lot of narcissists that are in therapy.
Yeah. Which small sample size means that it's really hard to study them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to figure out what you could potentially do to help these people, because there's just not very many of them able to talk about it.
And if we take the perspective that they are incapable of healing, you're not going to move anywhere in that direction of healing if you hold that position. So we have to be open to that possibility if we're even going to step forward into being able to heal more people who have this.
And that's not denying the pain that people have gone through
Yeah.
when they have to deal with it. But
Yeah. So if you're watching this, share this video with someone, spreading awareness, not diagnosing someone, spreading awareness. And I commend you, Ryan and Carrie, for just, wow, your entire journey and even sharing it with whoever ends up watching this. You know, we're all strangers essentially. So thank you. And Lagia, thanks for being my sidekick here. Oh my goodness. We get front row seats with this. I'm like, I need some popcorn. All right. Well, stay tuned for part 3. We'll give some teasers later on. But I'm excited just to keep listening, learning, spreading awareness. That's what it's all about. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good
Bye.
night, everyone.
Night.